It was a place of memories.
And that was my first job in baseball.
Moments.
That's the only place that all of us at that point knew.
A place of legend.
The 700 level. Everybody loved the 700 level.
For 33 years, it stood, a concrete home for the Phillies and Eagles.
And it brought a little tear to my eye.
Cementing an era in Philly sports history.
I started at the vet April 10th, 1971.
But it would crumble in the face of progress.
It was really a vile, disgusting place.
But it was ours.
They said it was a dump, but it was our dump.
Philadelphia is a sports town, a place revered by the hometown crowd and bashed by the opposition. We have seen athletes come and go. Same goes for the fields where they play. Connie Mack, JFK Stadium, the Spectrum, all places that gave our teams home field advantage. But perhaps none lives on with more tales and tradition like this one.
A field full of memories. I was there more than I was any place I had ever lived.
April 10th, 1971. It was the first game at Veterans Stadium and Mike DeMuzio's first day of work.
I started in high school. I was a senior at Bishop Newman High School.
Growing up in South Philly, it was the pride of the neighborhood and the city.
When Veterans Stadium had been built and opened in 1971, it was, by the standards of the time, considered a state-of-the-art stadium. I mean, it was brand new, and everybody was really excited.
Yes, a home, not just for the Phillies, but the Eagles, too.
They wanted a stadium, like a lot of other cities, that had football and baseball. It was cookie cutter. It was a big cinder block stadium.
Built at a cost of $63 million. At the time, it was the place to be, the place to play.
But I have nothing but good things reminded me of my baseball career at the vet.
Larry Boa played in the first game.
I got the first hit at the vet off of Bill Stoneman. We were playing the Montreal Expos, and we won that game.
I was at one of the first couple games there.
And we spent a lot of our childhood at the vet.
The Vet quickly became the nickname that stuck.
The thing about the vet that people need to remember, the one positive, was just how many great teams, how many great players played at the vet. So when you think about Steve Carlton and Mike Schmidt and Randall Cunningham and Reggie White, these are all-time Phillies and all-time Eagles that played in this stadium.
The stadium was huge. At one point, the capacity reached 71,000 for a football game. Former Phillies general manager Ed Wade was there for much of the vet's history.
You know, I counted up the other day that probably over the course of my career I was probably at 10,000 games when you start talking about spring training and instructional league and regular season and postseason stuff. And it really becomes, it's more than just the fabric of your life. It sort of becomes the background of everything that happens in your life.
Many iconic moments happened at Veterans Stadium. 1983, the Phillies became National League champions. 93 as well.
And the Philadelphia Phillies have won the National League pennant.
And that same year, a game ended
4:40 in the morning.
The 4:40 a.m. finish to that doubleheader that we had played that year where Mitch Williams gets the base hit to left center field.
My friends and I were driving around midnight, and we heard that the Phillies were going to go into the second game of their doubleheader, so a bunch of us said, why don't we all go down there? And they just let us right in at 12:30 in the morning, and then we watched baseball for the next 4 hours until Mitch Williams hit in the run for the Phillies to win.
And the Phillies win the game!
There were other big moments. The All-Star Game in '96.
Hey, programs here, program!
The 1980 Eagles winning the NFC Championship and heading to the Super Bowl.
It's the biggest thing that's ever happened to me as far as football is concerned, and this is what you dream about. Here we are.
And of course, the 1980 World Series.
You know, the ballpark obviously is a huge draw for the fans, but it's what happens on the field that really matters to everybody, I think, at the end of the day.
Yet for Ed, it was an off-the-field encounter that meant the most. The moment he met his wife, who was an usher.
Met her at the 4th floor elevator at Veteran Stadium, so certainly remember that part of it.
It was a place for promotion.
The characters and then the big ones out in center field.
It's where the famous Philly Fanatic was born.
The Fanatic grew beyond the walls of Veteran Stadium and became a symbol of Philadelphia. And I think in part unified the city.
The Vet was a model of magic.
Goodbye. Absolutely crushed.
And misery.
And I just remember thinking, man, this place is unbelievable. I can't wait to get out of here. It's scary.
Former Eagle Vi Sikahema played for 2 years with the team in '92 and '93. But his first experience was in the '80s during his time at BYU.
My senior year, we came and played at Veteran Stadium. And we played Temple. And a big fight broke out. And I remember just being showered with soda and beer and all kinds, and they were yelling stuff at us that we'd never heard, at BYU.
To this day, he considers it one of the toughest stadiums to play in as an outsider.
We felt like Roman gladiators. It felt like something, in medieval times.
The 700 level. Everybody loved the 700 level.
Well, not everyone.
I never sat in the 700 level. Thank goodness. I knew how crazy it was. I never had to go down to the jailhouse that was on the bottom of it. Thank goodness I never had.
Yes, the Vet was well known for having a jail, a courtroom, and a judge.
We're about putting the stands into a position where you can bring your children back to Veteran Stadium and enjoy the game without being assaulted.
Fans got in fights all the time. We saw that as players. When you look up in the stands, there'd be a beef that was going on. Second, 200 or 300 level, even always up at the 700 level. You went up there, took your life into your own hands if you went up there.
Mike, however, rarely sat down during a game. As director of stadium operations, he saw a lot.
Just being around the atmosphere, it's something that a lot of people talk about. Sports are, whether it's baseball or football or basketball, so everybody is always interested in what you did.
But over time, the Vet began to lose its luster.
The insides of it were starting to crumble. Wasn't safety conscious anymore.
I thought for comfort it sucked. It's all concrete. Seats were not, no. Look, when you're young, you don't care. You get older, you do care.
It may have been built out of solid concrete, but towards the end, the incidents started piling up. Broken elevators, injuries to fans and players.
Who do we sue? Is it a lawyer here? Who do we sue? Did we sue the city or the Eagles?
Everything from railings to the turf.
That awful turf that place had.
It all began to fall apart.
Nobody complained more about any part of the ballpark than the turf.
Especially for football.
Everybody acknowledged it was the worst field in the NFL.
Things were breaking down. Of course, a preseason game with the Eagles and Ravens had to be postponed because the guys were stepping down deep into the cutouts for second base and first base, and they considered it dangerous.
We never practiced on the surface. We never really had a chance to walk on the surface, so we didn't know what shoes to sort of wear on that particular, turf. Some guys were slipping. Some guys were pretty cautious.
When you walk, in some places your foot actually sunk in, and it was just way too risky for we as players to be playing on that kind of surface.
There was a covering on second base, but it was the lip of it was about 3/4 inches, almost an inch higher than the rest of the turf. So you had to be really careful. In fact, we called our plays according to that part of the field. If we had the ball, we were moving, we would run plays towards that part of the field because we knew where the second base lip was, where the covering was, that covered second base, and the defense didn't.
And Ray Rhodes is the one guy who used it as an advantage. He would tell free agents, look, if you want to just, roll up your sleeves and get dirty and go back to the way it used to be, old-time football, this is the place for you.
I don't know how they played on that because it's like playing on the runway at Philadelphia Airport.
There's a lot of former players that used to play on there will talk about their legs, knees, and everything is tore up at Vet Stadium.
Even today, it is the subject of scrutiny. 6 former Phillies players who played at the Vet have died of glioblastoma, an aggressive form of brain cancer.
He always had an incredible attitude and just kept going.
According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, the rate of brain cancer among Phillies who played at the Vet between 1971 and 2003 was about 3 times higher than the average rate among adult men in the U.S., though there's been no definitive link between the cancer and the turf.
I don't think Tug really knew that he was not going to beat this until he got the phone call in Nashville from Rusty Staubs. And I'll never forget that it was his old teammate from the Mets, and he just kind of looked at me and he goes, "Am I going to meet your dad in heaven?" And I thought, oh, he knows.
Fortunately, we were out running on the turf every day. And again, people always talked about how hard the turf was. Well, I can tell you that the turf wasn't ever as hard as it was in January. Because it's cold, it had a rubber pad underneath it that would freeze. The pad would get wet and then freeze, so it naturally is going to be hard. In the summertime, it was one of the softest surfaces you could find because it was 90 degrees outside. Some days it was 130 degrees on the turf.
But it was more than the turf.
It was really a vile, disgusting place.
The coaches always talk about how mice and rats were falling out of the ceilings and stuff, and
all kinds of animals up in the ceiling. There were rats and mice and cats, and every time they ran around, you'd get this junk falling on your computer.
I think a lot of attention was paid to the little things at Veterans Stadium too, but you were working in a different type of facility that had outlived its usefulness at that point in time.
People found out that multi-purpose model really didn't work, and was particularly ill-suited for football. You know, you have a circular stadium, and then you drop a football field in the middle of it, and the 50-yard line seats are miles away from the field.
In 1998, during the Army-Navy game, 8 West Point cadets were hurt when a rail collapsed. After that, the calls for something to be done only got louder.
I had a good time down there, but it was overdue. Yeah, it was long overdue.
The days of Veterans Stadium were numbered.
It was a little bit of a heart wrench for us all.
It was time to say goodbye.
HK, Harry Callis changes a number only fitting. You broke in with this stadium, started the stadium, and you will finish this stadium. And a touching moment, putting that 0 countdown number up there. And obviously the wonderful gesture to his whiteness, the number 1. Touching moment, and what an applause, what an ovation.
It was the final realization that, you know, you're not going to work there anymore.
It's the end of the Vet.
You know, it was a passing in time. It was time for new stuff. Out with the old, in with the new.
In 1999, both the Eagles and the Phillies began a push to move out of Veterans Stadium and into their own venues, something the Eagles wanted desperately.
One of the things that Jeffrey Lurie really wanted to do when he bought the team was get them a stadium that was their stadium. Some of it was the financial advantage, obviously, but the other part of it was just having a place you called home.
it all became about luxury boxes, and teams need to have that extra revenue to buy better players, and also, of course, they wanted the parking revenue.
By 2003, both Lincoln Financial Field and Citizens Bank Park were under construction and ready for the next season.
The Vet was crazy. I mean, the Vet was a place where, you know, everybody's kind of animal instincts came out. And I know Eagles fans loved Veterans Stadium. And there were some great games, some great moments, but it was a dump by the end. And it was time to move.
Bill Giles, Paul Owens.
The final game played at the Vet was on September 28, 2003.
Yet backstage, the mood was jovial as the Phillies prepared to throw one final spectacular ceremony to bring down the curtain on this wonderful place.
It was a moment recorded and saved by fans to this day.
Now pitching for the Phillies, number 45, Todd McGraw!
A 1-2 pitch to Willie Wilson struck him out. Phillies are world champions of baseball.
In the last year, there were times where I just walked the vet on my own and remember times that I had conversations with people who I had them with, where I sat in certain places, and just tried to relive the memories of different people that I had met.
Over the next 6 months, everything was stripped away.
I actually watched them drill holes into the columns and actually place the charges into a lot of the columns.
Preparation for one final goodbye.
Greg Luzinski will perform his final Veterans Stadium Bull Blast by joining the Fanatic and pushing a plunger to bring down the vet.
Got here about 2 in the morning, and you could just, the ballpark was just sitting there waiting to be. It was very, very eerie. It was very eerie that you knew it was going down.
March 21st, 2004.
Probably like 6:30 in the morning or something like that.
The explosives were set. A crowd came to watch, counting down while counting up the memories.
It was the final realization that, you know, you're not going to work there anymore.
After working at Veterans Stadium from beginning to end, Mike DeMuzio secured perhaps the best seat in the house.
So that's where you were?
That's the theme tower. It's been modified since Citizens Bank has been built. It was a little bit higher. It was 3-sided. It had a solid side that's facing us, and it had a roof on top.
It was up here Mike watched the concrete crash down.
And with about 10 minutes left before the implosion, the demolition people came to me and said they needed to get another cameraman up on the theme tower. And I told them that he had to be escorted up by me. And they said that that wasn't going to happen because it was inside the area. And I said, well, then him getting up there wasn't going to happen because he couldn't take the elevator himself. And they finally relented and let me escort him up to the top of the theme tower. So I was basically on top of the theme tower, and it wasn't until I got up there that I said to myself, what are you doing up here? Are you crazy?
It was, as we say at NBC, it was must-see TV. Everybody had to tune in and watch the explosion happen.
The charges have been placed in 3,000 strategic places to make sure it comes down exactly the way they want it to.
Greg Luzinski was there with the implosion. There was the final bull blast.
3, 2, fire, fire!
You could hear the dynamite going off, and then it just went down in that spiral, and then the dust.
My wife and one of our daughters was here to witness it in person, but watching it on the screen in Clearwater, it was a little bit of a heart wrench for us all because of the fact that so many things have happened here. And also just thinking back on some of the people who you interacted with over the years, who are no longer with us, who weren't there to witness that thing.
Wow. That's all you can say. Wow.
Wow is right. Wow.
20 years.
20 years.
Watching it still brings emotion.
Very emotional. It was the only ballpark I ever knew.
and it brought a little tear to my eye thinking of all the good memories that you had at the Vet.
So many things happened in that stadium, both, with the Phillies and also, the Eagles. It was, that time had passed, and here we were, and it was just incredible.
I'm glad I was up there by myself and nobody else got to see my reactions, nobody that I worked with, because there were a lot of tears shed that day, but nobody saw mine.
A monument of moments reduced to dust in a minute.
I think it took 62 or 63 seconds to go down. And the smoke just went from here directly over Citizens Bank Park. It was as if it was meant to be.
The new home for the Phillies, consecrated by the ashes of the past.
When you see all this stuff laid out, do all those memories come back?
Yeah, absolutely.
A mini time capsule of an era gone by.
We've got yearbooks in here. We've got some Veteran Stadium AstroTurf. This is actually a piece of Veteran Stadium that was in my office for a long time. That was just kind of the rubble that was there. So drove by and grabbed it and stuck it in my office for the last 20 years.
The home may have changed, but the games didn't. Well, not too much at least.
The great thing about baseball is you can see generations come through the turnstiles and understand that what's happening is there's a father or a grandfather or a grandmother or a mother sitting with their kids and trying to explain to them what this game is all about.
Today,
this is the original home plate area from Veteran Stadium, right here.
In the middle of a parking lot.
And you'll see during games or prior to games, kids will come out and play wiffle ball games out here. They used to have wiffle ball tournaments out here.
Yes, new generations who will only know the Vet through the stories of those who sat inside these walls.
But I gotta be perfectly honest with you. There was such a raw feeling when you were in the Vet.
And perhaps no one knew that better than Tom Garvey, a parking lot manager who says he lived at Veterans Stadium for 2 years.
It was under the 300 level seats. It was in left field.
Even writing a book about how he turned a concession stand into an apartment.
The first night I slept in the Vet, the night before the Pope came to town. And by that weekend, I had a refrigerator, I had a whole kitchen set up in there. I was bringing all kinds of stuff in that wasn't there. And it was a great apartment. I had everything a guy could want.
For many fans, a piece of the Vet has become a piece of their own home. The old blue seats supporting recollections of every win and every loss.
Yeah, they're in my backyard. And it's funny, when I started in 95, 96 is when we put the new blue seats in. So that winter, all the original brown and yellow and the earth tone seats were being taken out.
You kind of always remember that first car that you had. Maybe it was a clunker, but it was yours. And you experienced a lot of things in that car. And that's the way I kind of relate the Vet.
Something else stuck around as well. The Liberty Bell atop the Vet now greets fans in front of the bank.
It's a different generation. And they don't show their emotions as much when they're angry as they did back when we played.
And 20 years after the dust settled.
I guess people still talk trash about the Vet, but the funniest thing I heard about the Vet, somebody said, it's a toilet, but it's our toilet.
Doug Brzezinski, the old Eagles offensive lineman, once said, you walk in the door and you get that mixture of spilled beer and vomit and urine and diesel fuel. And that's what it was like walking in the door of the Vet.
It was very special. It was a place that I got to know an awful lot of people, some very, very, very good people who have become my very close friends.
Unfortunately, it was a time that was needed for change. Sad, but just something that was needed.
Citizens Bank Park and Lincoln Financial Field have now ushered in the next era of fandom.
It's the only place my children know. They don't know, they don't know the other place, but they know this place.
But those who knew the other place knew it well.
I love playing there, believe me. If I had to turn back the clock and say you could pick anywhere you want to play, mine would be at Philadelphia at the Vet.
People can try to glorify it in retrospect, but it was a dump, and the day it was demolished was one of the happiest days of my life.
Others hold it with a sense of reverence and nostalgia.
You know, you have to be in your 50s now to have played in the Vet. And a lot of guys have been retired for 10 years, never even saw the Vet. 20 years, and they hadn't seen the Vet. There's just a smaller group of guys who had the opportunity to play at Veterans Stadium.
And it was loud, and it was crazy, and if you were a visiting team, you wanted to get the heck out of Dodge as soon as you could.
It wasn't the nicest thing. It was a big cinder block ballpark and stadium, but a lot of special times happened in that ballpark and stadium.
Times that give you the feel of Philadelphia.
There are memories that a wrecking ball can't erase.